What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim, and we are talking state of the Ducks. But before I introduce my guest, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe there. And of course, you can find us on Apple and Spotify. Find us on X. Find us on Instagram. And of course, you can always email me at big10footballtalk@gmail.com. But without further ado, from the Quack 12 podcast, Adam, welcome to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here. I mean, it's still a weird feeling where we're doing like conference reviews and previews and stuff like that. And I'm talking to Big Ten people. That's still a new feeling, but I'm still glad to be here on Big Ten Football Talk.
And it's cool. I was just thinking about this. You guys are more numerically accurate than the Big Ten because you're the Quack 12. So you're beating us on that right now. But we'll talk about a little bit about the craziness of that. But before we do anything else, Adam, you were kind of telling me off air all that you do in terms of covering Oregon. Tell me two things. How did you get involved in covering the Oregon football team, the program? And also, how did the Quack 12 come to be and all of that?
Yeah, well, basically, I went to school at the U of O from 2008 to 2012, which if you're going to join in as like a bandwagon fan, man, those were the good times. Whoo, it was so good. I love Yellow Michael. Dyer was down. I'll throw that out there. But so those were the greatest times to become a real Duck fan. I grew up in Oregon too. Didn't really care about sports till I went to college, till I was at Autzen, and it really washed over me. And then I moved to Seattle. Of all places, I moved to Seattle. And it was mainly to save like my relationship with my friends, with my girlfriend, with my family, who did not want to hear me talk about the Oregon Ducks anymore. I started a podcast. We have a very strange, we almost have like a bipolar podcast because I have one host named Hithliday on Twitter, who is the best follow you possibly can if you're looking for like college football film review, breaking down rosters, getting not into just like the depth, but the depth of all these teams. He comes on very frequently. He's a really close friend of mine, regular co-host. And then the other guy who when we started this podcast in 2017, knew absolutely nothing about college football. And to this day, we've had a weekly podcast during the off season, even every single week since 2017. He still knows exactly as much as when he started, knows absolutely nothing. But at the same time, the magic of the show is this guy who's not really keeping up with it. Last year, we did a pick'em, or, we were picking all the over-under season totals for the Pac-12. And he got all 12 of his picks right. So
dang,
it's kind of frustrating, honestly, but because to show how like kind of pointless sometimes all this is. But so that's kind of the premise of the show. We really idolized Bill Walton too, as kind of our North Star when making the show.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but we've had a great time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. You have a foil to it's Tiff is the guy's name.
Oh, that's the Hithliday is his name. It's a very strange one. Yeah.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah. So good foil to Hith, who you were telling me off air, like he's already watched every Big Ten game for the past 4 years doing film breakdowns.
That is right. He does it with every team that Oregon like could possibly play over the years. So many times it'd be like he already had the footage because of a Rose Bowl or something like that, but also just does it for every team in the country because something's wrong upstairs. Over on Addicted to Quack is where you can find the website where he's posting these really in-depth articles that we fortunately we help him with these because we're interviewing every single Big Ten team right now. Like we've gotten through it, and he really does some of the best work in the country, and I'm really glad to have him on so often.
That's really cool. So definitely check out it's Addicted to Quack and the Quack 12 podcast. We'll have that information in the description down below as well, whether regardless if it's Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Definitely check those out. We'll have the links there too. Why don't we get in? You were talking about the move from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten and how it's kind of nuts being on a Big Ten podcast. Talk about that a little bit more. I think we were all a little shocked. The USC UCLA was kind of like really, really insane.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think, time went on and we're like, okay, the Big Ten is probably done adding for a while. And then kind of out of the blue, you see smoke of Oregon and Washington, and all of a sudden it's just a done deal. What has Oregon's outlook been moving from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten?
I definitely don't want to write off. Like, it really did feel like a death in the family when the destruction of the Pac-12 truly happened. I mean, the USC UCLA thing, when they left, there was still a possibility. We were Pac-10 not too long ago, so maybe that was going to work out. And it kind of felt like it was, for whatever reason. I mean, money is what it really comes down to. It did not. And so it is a bummer. I mean, just every Big Ten fan here, you have the team you root for, but I'm sure there's also a couple other teams in your conference that you feel fondly for. Maybe the team that's upset your rival or something like that, or just in general split fans. This is the part of country you live in, so you're rooting for them. Like, I'm gonna miss playing Cal on a regular basis. Oregon Stanford was some truly crazy games back in the day. And just in general, like, having Stanford, such a strange school in general, like, it's practically an Ivy but kind of not, and like it's playing a weird, like, nerdy bully football. I'm actually gonna miss what they were, or like literally Oregon State. I mean, an ancient rivalry. Fortunately, we're going to still play, but like, we're not pretending like this isn't, going to maybe sink the Beavers for a while in competitive college football. So there's definitely a mourning sense to it. On the other hand, every Oregon fan, we're obsessed with, we just want the one natty, like, in football. We just need the national, like, please let us get this thing. This only helps us in that regard. And we couldn't have stepped up to the Big Ten at a better moment for us. You're an Ohio State fan. I'm sure like, most of Oregon's history when it comes to, like, okay, let's see if we're ready for a Big Ten team. Let's see if we're ready for Ohio State. The first 9 times the answer came back, no, you were not ready for Ohio State, or, some of these other Big Ten, like a Penn State or stuff like that. But as of right now, the way it's recruiting, Dan Lanning saying that, he's going to stick around. Obviously, us having coaches leaving us, like, prematurely, like Willie Taggart, Mario Cristobal, got us into that mindset of like, okay, so we're always going to be second level. He's done a masterful job of, like, saying, no, I am staying here, and gaining and utilizing the power that you can have, like a Kirby Smart or something, where you're like, I'm staying in this same spot, and we can build, and we can get the benefits from continuity. And not a better time to step up to the Big Ten and have these truly blue blood rivals. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, like, that's the big league. Nebraska at one point was,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, and you maintain USC, you maintain Washington.
Yeah.
Washington, who has been a rival. You have a lot of new rivalries that are in that upper echelon, but you also keep a couple as well. You mentioned Dan Lanning. I appreciate your perspective on saying that he's going to stay, that the continuity. I remember when the Alabama job came open, and like, he put out a press release being like, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, that's really good for Oregon and really bad for the rest of the Big Ten, because he's really brought that Georgia mentality, in a sense, of, hard-nosed football. I think Mario Cristobal was doing that a little bit before he left. But talk more about what Dan Lanning has meant for Oregon and how he's elevating them right now.
First of all, back to that hype video of him saying the grass is dang green in Oregon, which was so good. Not only that, but there was also the flip where it's like the rumor was Dan Lanning was going to Alabama, sure thing, and all of us Duck fans, a lot of the Duck fans accepted it. Most of us weren't even necessarily mad because you're like, it's Alabama, it's
Yeah.
Alabama. You're replacing Nick Saban, but for him to do that, and all these Washington fans were making fun of us, and then for it to completely switch, and for finally their coach to, oh, it was so great. But Dan Lanning specifically, I mean, back in the day, even with our most success that we had before Dan Lanning with Chip Kelly, recruiting was always something like, because we were being so innovative on the field, and because we were getting so much out of the lower stars that we were recruiting, like getting like 3-star offensive linemen and really developing them and turning them into like a totally working offensive line for that system, but still not getting, I mean, winning some recruiting battles. Like I'm wearing a D'Anthony Thomas shirt right now, but not winning the amount of battles that like we are now to truly build elite depth. And Scott Frost, who was like the OC during a lot of that time, he even like publicly said, he's like, look, like recruits don't want to come to Eugene, like saying it out loud, which seems very idiotic in retrospect.
Nebraska fans may have just died a little inside when you said that.
Exactly. And him just, and really all of us just kind of accepting like, yeah, I guess not. And don't get me wrong, I know like NIL is playing a huge part of this. Also, truly don't care. Again, we need that one natty. Don't care if we have to buy it. But
Yeah.
what Dan Lanning has done, just establishing as a young guy that he's like, I'm here to stay. I understand the potential that this place has with the Phil Knight Nike money, the Nike connection, with the recent trajectory of like all the coaches before him of like the Chip Kelly era, even what Cristobal did with recruiting. Like Lanning inherited kind of a wonky roster. Like it definitely needed some repairing in key parts, but overall, like a talented in the trenches, which is what Cristobal was best at. Lanning has been the best at roster management and managing the coaches that he brings in. Like recruiting the recruiters has been a huge part of his game plan. Now, the only thing that we have right now, which is what you could say about a lot of, like, I'm talking to Ohio State fan. I know you what I'm talking about. He's not winning the biggest crucial games against rivals so far. But sometimes, I mean, we lost to Washington the last 3 times by 3 points each time. Like sometimes it's just flipping a coin, and you didn't get it that time. But we couldn't be happier with him. Seemingly just a young coach, so much energy, and knows. I think it's that combination that we were talking about before we hit record, of not afraid to go and find the elite talent. Like once you get on the Oregon roster, he's trying to replace you with somebody better. That is what he tells the people coming in. And so he's not afraid to get the elite transfer talent that he believes he needs, but also knows you need to be developing these key spots, especially like at O-line. You can't be taking in 3 starter O-lines like that can be disastrous. Like seemingly knows how to actually build it up in the way that you should be traditionally.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like, it sounds like what you are helping maybe the rest of the Big Ten understand is that what Dan Lanning has done, everybody will, joke about Phil Knight and the Nike money, right? Like, of course they're going to recruit well with that.
Got a Phil Knight bobblehead here. Rescue it.
That's awesome. For those of you listening, not watching on YouTube, legitimately, it is a Phil Knight bobblehead that Adam has. It's great. But what Dan Lanning has done is he's actually provided the stability and actually given the belief that maybe other coaches did not have or didn't give, which makes a lot of sense. And even, Chip Kelly, who I know is someone who did a lot at Oregon to really innovate beyond Mike Bellotti. Chip Kelly is a lot of things. A recruiter is not one of them.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've talked about. And actually, I don't know if you've connected with Hooligan over at the Sound the Siren podcast.
Yeah, I've met him in the past. Yeah.
It wasn't Hooligan. It was Kevin from the Bruin podcast, UCLA. I'm like, Chip wasn't at Washington. What am I doing? Kevin was mentioning that, he did not recruit at UCLA, didn't really want to. Dan Lanning is like, I want to recruit. I'll attack the portal. And it sounds like that mix of the resources, but also really the belief, really has Oregon at the precipice of something that maybe we haven't really seen before.
I agree. I agree with all those, including the fact that I'm not sure how much Chip Kelly likes football, like in theory. I'm not sure how much he likes like the people he has to interact with to get the football going. But I mean, as OC though, a pretty smart pickup, I gotta say. Like,
yeah,
I get what you're doing. Yeah.
As long as he doesn't have to recruit, then yes. That's if we can send all the, I guess, 20 other people to recruit. So we'll send Brian Hartline. He can recruit everybody. We can have 50 wide receivers.
Well, I mean, it's Ohio State. I assume it just kind of recruits itself. I don't know.
That's well, you'd think, but offensive line is not one of those strengths right now. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. Speaking of recruiting, you guys have been recruiting at historic levels. I think you already, referenced Phil Knight, right? But is it just Phil Knight? Is it just the money? Is it just Dan Lanning? Like what else can you attribute this to?
Well, I definitely think it's like the fact that he is young and is so willing to be like he's not one of those coaches going out there being like, NIL's hurting the game, man. Like, he is so fully ready. And I think so much of this is behind closed doors, but it appears that it's not necessarily like Oregon has the quote unquote most money to spend. It appears they were the most ready day one to roll this system out and to like provide the bag. So I know that is the lubricant getting all of this going and to convince people, I'd like to live in Eugene, Oregon for a little while, beautiful place, but we're getting people from all over the country that maybe, never even heard of it. But I do think a huge part of it is that the specific, I mean, we're not really losing too many coaches, like individual spots, except Carlos Lachlan. But
we've liked him a lot, by the way. But
yeah.
And you guys got a good running back coach beyond him too.
I really Samples. I really have dug him. I loved him, what he did at Arizona State. And again, like Arizona State, I think because I really believe he's such a good general manager, really, Dan Lanning, because all of these coaches he's getting, like Kenny Dillingham was such a young guy, like what was he, like 21 years old or whatever? No, not really, but he was so young as an OC. It proved to be a great hire. And like Arizona State, he immediately goes over to Arizona State, and I think he's going to do good. I mean, it's going to take a long time for them to dig out of the hole of Herm Edwards, but I think that proved to be a really smart young hire. Will Stein, it was again just like the perfect person to follow him, to get a lot of those like offensive like prospects that were maybe on the fence, like Will Stein is doing so many similar things. And I think especially offensively, which is where we're getting so much of our best talent and we're getting the most out of it. I think it's just like players like a Dylan Gabriel, especially after Bo Nix, who's like, I just saw Bo Nix go from a laughing stock, a meme of how he was nothing, to a literal Heisman contender. And I think it's because I mean, really, you could probably boil every single thing down to football into they care about the lines, and once you start winning that battle, recruiting wise and developing wise, every single thing in your life is going to get better. That's what it feels like. Like receivers want to play for you because you got a good offensive line, which got you the good
Mm-hmm.
QB, and then like the defense wants to play for a winning team, like
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I always thought of Oregon before Dan Lanning as kind of a really fun and like gimmicky is probably the wrong word.
I get what you
Like
mean though. Yeah.
yeah, like it, there's gimmicky where it's like, oh, we're just gonna, do the hook and ladder. It's Chris Peterson at Boise State is what I think.
Yeah.
Like you guys weren't that, but it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how you won a lot of games. But that's not who you guys are anymore. You still have some of that in your playbook, but it's like if you need to go and have a 7-minute drive with power football and then beat you over the top, like Michigan has
Yeah.
the past couple of years, you guys can do that now.
Absolutely.
And the thing, you hit something that I think has become more and more clear in this world of college football that Dan Lanning, it sounds like he's gotten, is that he's become that CEO
Mm-hmm.
early. Like he kind of knows his role and sets people up well. It says, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to recruit. We're going to utilize everything that we have
Mm-hmm.
and just go to work. And he's done it really well.
Absolutely. And I really think just his cutthroat roster management, where whatever's going on behind the scenes, you can see like a lot of the players that are I don't want to be one of those fans that's like, if they left us, we didn't want them. That's not 100% the case. But sometimes you are seeing the 3-star leave and the 4-star come in, like quite a bit. And he's clearly not star chasing, but meanwhile getting so many stars. And again, it's the decision not just to say, hey, I'm staying at Oregon, I'm going to go online, do Twitter and blah 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 blah, I'm staying at Oregon, go Ducks. He's going out there and he's got a video team that was making awesome propaganda all season long for us. He gets them to edit a 8-minute video that ends with him smoking a cigar in his giant Nike $1 million office. Like he knows the mentality of like doing the extra viral thing, like appearing like young for these guys. Also like treating that with the coaching staff, like getting the young hotshot guys. Like you want them to be hired away. So then people are like, oh, I want to go work at Oregon because then that's a step, like I could be a coach, something like that. Like, I think he's doing it a lot better than like a Coach Prime way, which seems truly chaotic. All sizzle.
there's sizzle, but there's like substance to the sizzle.
Yeah. Yeah. And the substance is again like big 4 or 5-star linemen.
Yeah. yeah, paving the way. Well, let's talk about, because I think obviously Dylan Gabriel is the key transfer, and the guy that everybody's talking about, like much more polished than when Bo Nix came in. I think a lot of people assume that he's an early Heisman favorite, but there's a lot of other guys on this roster, both who have been around a little bit, but also who have transferred in, that make this roster probably a top 5 roster in all of college football. Kind of talk about some of these guys that really make this team dangerous for this season.
Absolutely. Well, like, for example, what I would say is the kind of depth where you look at this team and why so many people are kind of being like, this may be a playoff team, this may be like going on a playoff run team, is because, for example, and this is the stuff that probably would have been possible without NIL. But it's like having Dylan Gabriel and having Dante Moore, like those two, getting the transfer from UCLA, which if you're looking at his stats, I mean, Chip Kelly was again, like, as a head coach, was doing some pretty crazy things in 2023. Like probably had the worst introduction as a freshman QB as you can have, where it's like, oh, you're the starter. Oh, you're not the starter. Oh, you threw 2 pick sixes in 2 games.
Yeah.
Like
yank. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like probably the worst thing for him mentally, but physically, like there's a reason why this guy was so coveted, and he was going to be a Duck, but ended up switching over to UCLA. But like, holding on to these two solid QB options is crazy. Even like Austin Novosad, who's the third guy, looked freaking good in the spring game. It's a spring game, I know, but it's like, it's the fact that one of these guys isn't transferring out is the stuff we would only hear about in like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State rosters. Like the ability to hold on, be like, well, if we got two good guys, we're really only going to have one good guy because they'd rather be depth on Alabama than a starter for us or something. It doesn't seem to be that way anymore. Jordan James last year looked so solid, and we love Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving was the fact that Minnesota didn't let him be called Bucky because Wisconsin, that was a huge blessing for us, and I'm sure they regret it. Because Bucky Irvin was amazing for us. But even in the latter part of that season, he was getting a little, worn down. Jordan James behind him really caught Oregon's eyes. Like, this guy is a serious running back, serious power. If Noah Whittington is healthy, that's the kind of guy who would go crazy in Will Stein's offense too. Like as a true running back, pass catcher. Like, I think that guy, if he's fully healthy, regardless of Jordan James behind this O-line, is going to be someone to look out for in the Big Ten. Like, it's going to be amazing.
I was looking at just a couple stats, 7.1 yards per carry last year.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's only going to get like better this year. And then like receiving. So throughout all of Oregon's great teams, there's been way more bad teams than good teams in this history, but through the greatest teams in Oregon history, even wide receiver has always been a bit of a weak point. Like, even in that 2014 national championship, we had like some solid ones, and then like one, smoked weed and he got kicked off, and one was injured. And I mean, two receivers getting off the team, it's like, that's obviously going to hurt you. But I also think it's that elite level where there are some teams that can survive that. Oregon almost is getting to that point here. Like, this is the best receiving core we've ever had in our entire history, especially with like Tez Johnson, who caught the most passes in school history last season. He's the brother of Bo Nix. He's sticking around though, because he liked what we had coming back. Evan Stewart. Now, Evan Stewart from Texas A&M, he's the guy we're all very excited about. We think he's going to have a big year. And we think the only reason why he didn't really excel at Texas A&M is because whatever Jimbo Fisher was doing. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Elite talent, for sure.
Yeah. Like, it's truly, like, we've been so stoked about it. Maybe like a little bit shorter than you would think at someone at that position, but it does not matter. He's going to be someone I'm super stoked about. I'm mainly talking about offense here because that's where like the most returning talent is. But there's a lot of young talent I'm stoked about on the defense. And I think the name, maybe they're not deserving of all this credit, but the name that Duck fans love the most, because we are very bitter rivals. I mean, I know you hate Michigan quite a bit, so you get this too. But we love so much Jabbar Muhammad because he burned us so many times when we played him against Washington, that we're excited to. And our secondary was a weakness last year. Then again, the only team that was able to take advantage of that weakness was a team with like 3 NFL receivers, Michael Penix. Like, we hate Washington, but even most Duck fans are like, what Michael Penix had last season was pretty dang incredible. And sometimes you just have to be like, you could do everything right if a great QB throws a perfect pass to a great receiver. What you gonna do? But we're very excited to see him. And I mean, there is some defensive talent we're excited about. Obviously, like Jordan Birch looks like he's fully healthy, ready to go. Jeffrey Bassa's the general of our defense. He's one of those guys that's like, he was a safety, and then due to injury, he had to become a linebacker. So there was some awkward years in there where he's gaining weight. But now especially after last season, he looks to be fully linebackered up. but also with those skills that you kind of want to see in this kind of defense, where he's truly able to cover people too.
Just as you're talking about Jeffrey Bassa, Jabbar Muhammad, obviously the transfer from Washington, Jordan Birch coming over. What's really strikes me as I look up and down the depth chart, at least according to Phil Steele, is the amount of seniors on this roster, which it's interesting because I think that's actually been a trend as I've been noticing. Like if you look at Ohio State's roster, I was just doing a roster review with Rutgers, which I think Rutgers is better. They're certainly not at the level of Oregon and Ohio State, but they are like they're building something there.
We were talking about it this season. I feel like everyone's starting to catch up on this. Rutgers may surprise some people. They may collect some wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we had a joke on the Big Ten huddle probably about a month ago. We were joking that the blue bloods are going to cannibalize each other, and Oregon, Washington, or Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, they're all going to cannibalize each other, and it's going to be Iowa, Rutgers in the Big Ten championship.
We had the same thought with Rutgers, like how funny it would be if because like they look like they could win 10 of their games, because if you look at their schedule, like it's pretty funny. God, I hope that does not happen. I really hope that does not happen.
You and CBS.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Well, at least it would be like that would truly feel like, okay, so this is the end times for college football. Rutgers and Iowa.
We're going straight back to divisions. We're not doing this again.
Oh my gosh.
But to that, like it's an incredible time where you have juniors and seniors up and down a roster that you would think it would be mostly sophomores and maybe juniors. What do you attribute that to, like the ability to kind of keep senior laden guys who are talented on the roster?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because like obviously we're not including the ones who are like senior transfers in, but that is a big part of it. You got those, those seniors on there, and when you're bringing them on for a lot of these positions, you're bringing them on to teach the young ones, so it is a part of it. And for example, like Dylan Gabriel, if he plays 12 games, he will surpass Bo Nix's record of most starting games. So that's pretty likely. So I do think like the COVID year certainly added to it. The extra, the amount of like, we had a player back in the day, he played for us. He's still playing. Cam McCormick was a tight end. Now he's over at Miami. I think this is his 8th year or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. it's insane. But you look at it, it's the injuries. It's like, no, he deserves an 8th year. I do think it is people. It's just that belief of like, once they start seeing the results of like, I think I can go to the NFL if I can get a starting position here, then it's going to convince them to stick around. I'm going to mention it for the millionth time, but NIL makes it literally able so you can stick around more because it's like financially feasible, and like, up on the books now and stuff like that. I do think not like back in the day. I do think that too, it's just a really freaking good culture right now. Like people want, once you leave this Oregon locker room, like that's going to be the best locker room you've ever seen, unless you go to certain NFL teams, because they do put the emphasis on trying to get the best experience for the people. I mean, it is that Cold War of just of getting like the campus for the students, getting the entire like where they're working out and stuff like that. And Phil Knight is ready to pay for that Civil War. We have this giant glass dome. It's this giant glass like cube, basically, right? You can see through the entire building. It's on campus, and it's got a big water fountain moat around it. And it's one of the most expensive buildings in all of Oregon. And it is just for student athlete tutoring. That's what we're talking about here. You know what I mean? And even track, like obviously we're Track Town USA. We really care about that. Like we have the best track in all of America, like literally global track. There was a world track competition that has never happened outside of Europe for the first time it happened in America, and it took place at Eugene, Oregon, because like the athletic facilities there, like, so I do think that's a big part of it, is just you kind of get the sense of like this is something special that I'm going to want to remember here. But also, I mean, I hope in the future it's like, no, we don't have any seniors, they're drafted by the time they're juniors, you know.
Yeah.
That's the goal. I mean,
yeah, it's walking that line of like, I want to keep the people, like keep people as long as I can, but if they're going to go to the NFL, that also speaks well for us. So
exactly.
we've walked that line a lot, and
I bet.
it's tough. Yeah, it's well, and I think when we saw everybody come back, it's similar. It's like the culture, the NIL, and it's very rare, because often you're like, go get paid. But yeah, it's a weird world.
And I'll tell you this as a great example of like, there is something there besides the money, you know, because like that's the cold hard fact of it. But like Justin Herbert could have been drafted at the end of the 2018 season. He had like people were talking about him. They wanted him. He would have done pretty well.
Yes.
He did not need to come back, especially after his collarbone injury. He came back. This is before NIL. They were not, you know, I'm sure he got some freaking under the table money or whatever, but it is not as much as he would have gotten if he would have gotten to the NFL. And he decided to come back his senior season, despite common sense saying, no, you should not. This could hurt your draft stock, because he's from Eugene, Oregon, and obviously his legacy, but because he truly loved being a Duck. And I say this, I guess it's probably obvious, like, we love our team, but as people join in the Big Ten, you know, like you see some Pac-12 teams, it's truly like, does anyone care about this team? Does anyone care about football? You know, you watch a UCLA game and you're like, the Rose Bowl is beautiful. It'd be cool if there were more than 2,000 people there in this shot, you know. There are a handful of teams, and the Ducks are, that truly are as bonkers as y'all in the Big Ten, you know. And
yeah, well, and let's talk about Autzen Stadium, because I think EA Sports came out with like the top 25 hardest stadiums to play in, and for their game and whatnot. And I remember looking, I forget where they had Autzen, but I was like, I've never been there, but I just feel like it's too low.
Yeah.
And so, you know, describe like that atmosphere. You've been there as a student. Now you probably get to go to games. Like, describe that atmosphere and that stadium.
You know, I've been told we are pretty friendly. I have a theory that, because whenever anyone talks about going on vacation or going to a different city, you know, that they don't live in, they always come back and they're always like, people are so nice there. I have a theory that everyone says that because you're on vacation and because you're asking for help when you normally wouldn't. And people are like, oh, you're not from here? Oh, I'll be nicer to you. Because you're like, that's my theory. But I've been told that we're nice guests, you know. I know this is one thing. I made fun of Nebraska earlier, but I was shocked. The rumors are true. They travel like crazy. When they came and played in Autzen, couldn't be nicer, just completely flooded it. It was amazing. But so overall, I think we're not the craziest hostile, unless you're a Washington Husky. I have seen, like, truly do not like that team, but it's a beautiful city. You know, it's the stereotypical what you think of a nice forest Oregon city. Not a huge city either. Not a huge stadium. Sits 60,000, or it doesn't even sit. You can get 60,000 people in there with the standing room and stuff like that. I know that is puny for Big Ten. I like it personally because it's like you can keep it full. And if they do expand it, which I've heard they're considering it, just because we're in Big Ten. If they do expand it, I really hope they remain with the idea of keeping it as hostile as possible noise wise, because noise wise, like on the field, that is obviously when we're showing up really big. Like, the Duck fans are passionate, loud fans. I have felt that place rocking. I would recommend, when you're showing up, you can go to the campus, cross the Autzen footbridge, which takes you over the Willamette River, which is just a really beautiful scenic site. It's near the Prefontaine Trail too. Prefontaine's like legendary 70s track runner. Also like Eugene legend that we love very much. It's I truly love the stadium. Has the, I believe, biggest college football screen as of right now. We have the
Really?
biggest actual screen. It is nuts too. The unfortunate thing is we have one, which is the new one, and it's huge and looks beautiful. And then we have the other one, which is like a bit older, and now we're like, now we gotta change that one up. But
Yeah.
just no, expenses are not spared. There's golden statues of the duck throughout, like or bronze statues, I suppose, like 2 or 3 that I've seen. I love it. Yeah.
Puddles, I'm obviously loyal to Brutus, but Puddles I think is my favorite mascot, like maybe ever. I mean,
He's very goofy. Yeah.
his throwdown with the cougar from Houston
Yeah,
is iconic. It's if you guys haven't seen it, YouTube Puddles beats up cougar.
It's amazing.
It's phenomenal.
I'm going to give your fan bases some fodder here. Okay.
Go for it.
This is a good way to get at Oregon fans. And this is also, you're going to be prepared to hear this monologue a billion times, and it's all right if you don't care. The mascot is actually not named Puddles.
Really?
Puddles is the name of, back in like the teens and 20s, we would catch a live duck at a pond. And I've actually seen someone bring this back. They weren't supposed to, but they brought a live duck into the game the other day. I saw it. It was crazy.
Oh my goodness.
But so they catch a live duck and they would name that Puddles. And then that would just be the mascot for the day. And then they would release it, or it would die in captivity. I don't really know. We stopped doing that for animal, cruelty reasons.
Right.
But so the mascot, the official mascot, his name is the Duck. That is it.
Really?
He is named the Duck. So you can disregard that. And if you want to get into Oregon's fans, only call him Puddles, because that will get them, like irrationally angry. But I don't care. But yeah, he's the best mascot in the world. He's so goofy. Like I love an original mascot. This is something I like about Ohio State. I hate any mascot that is like a husky, a wildcat, even like the bears, the lion. Like I want an original thing. Buckeye. There you go. That's a local original. Duck. It's a local original thing. Beaver. Like I like even like a Nittany lion. I truly don't know what that is, but that's the original thing, And there's also one other thing you got to look up if you're looking up funny mascot things. Look up Robo Duck. Have you ever heard of Robo Duck?
This sounds familiar.
But
share it more.
In the early 90s, in like the style of kind of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and like the live action movie and Power Rangers, Nike they thought the old mascot, the duck, was too old school. And technically that's a handshake deal with Walt Disney we did in the 60s, because he clearly looks like Donald Duck, obviously.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
And so they wanted to revamp it into something they thought was quote unquote cool. And so they tried introducing a new mascot in the early 90s called Robo Duck. He emerged from a giant egg on the 50-yard line. He pops out wearing green spandex, like very tight spandex, with kind of I'm holding up this. It's like a Mighty Ducks hockey, kind of like that cartoon show, if you ever saw it.
Yeah.
Kind of super hardcore looking. So he had that kind of mascot, and he would do like kind of karate backflips and everybody hated him so much that they stopped it immediately. You have to look up that video too. Look up the Houston fight and Robo Duck.
That was in the 90s?
That was early 90s. It's like the most 90s thing that's ever happened.
I was gonna say that's very 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's morph into a robot. Yes.
Yeah, some serious morphin energy in this one. Yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like ESPN already lies to us so much. I think the hardest lie to take is that they've called the duck puddles for like
Mm-hmm.
the past 20 years
Oh yeah.
and have never actually gotten it right.
No.
And I just I, that makes me cry a little bit inside that
I
you know
It's
they
to the
lie
point where
about
there are
the
some
SEC all the
Duck
time, but
fans. Yeah, they're the best. Yeah. Some Duck fans are like, "No, his name is Puddles." So, it
huh,
is somewhat, but I'm telling you, I've
it's the
looked at
duck.
the year by year by year. Another thing we do on the Quack 12 podcast for our Patreon is we literally pretend we have a show where we pretend to go in a time machine and go back to every football season starting in 1894, every Duck football
That's
season. We've gotten up to 1962 at this point. So I can tell you that this is the Puddles origin, the official Puddles origin.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And
Oh,
last year was the year I saw the actual guy sneak a white duck into.
that's
You can find that on Twitter too. That was crazy.
that's that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, so I'd imagine that you probably don't eat duck in Oregon, but where
Chinese.
well, maybe duck à l'orange.
Yeah.
But if someone from Big Ten country were to come and grab a bite to eat,
Mhm.
where are the local establishments that we should go, and what particularly should we get? Like, what's local to
Mm.
Eugene?
I'll tell you this. I don't even care, man. There is a really, really great, because it's not a fancy place. It's a hole in the wall, but right next to the U of O campus, there's a Chinese restaurant called Spring House. There, you can get a whole duck.
Really?
I say
Oh,
if you're Big Ten fans, you should come to U of O, go to Springhouse, get a full duck. It's delicious, first of all. Also,
mhm.
just literally the best like Hong Kong authentic cuisine you can get. It is delicious.
So
Like you look at 90% of the people coming into this place are like foreign exchange students from like Hong Kong or Japan or China because they know this is the place to go. So
yeah.
absolutely go there. But I'm going to list off a bunch. If you're looking for like the generic Eugene place to eat, Tracktown Pizza is a very good one. I'm not going to say it's like the best pizza you ever had in your life, but it's a solid pizza place. It's very thematic, right next to the campus. Prince Puckler's is an ice cream shop right next to U of O. Obama himself went there and got some ice cream. So if it's good enough
Oh
for a
wow.
president, you can go there. The Whitaker neighborhood in general, there's two different vibes in Eugene. One next to the campus, that is all, that's the campus vibe. Like we all know that's where all the 20-year-olds and stuff are hanging out. There's also the older hippie, like ex Grateful Dead vibe. That is the Whitaker neighborhood. If
Mm,
you're if you're a little bit older, just looking for some fun bars, really good places to eat, a whole bunch of good Mexican food down there. There's a good pizza place called Slice, a really good bar in that area called Sam Bonds that has live music and such.
mm,
Rennie's, I'm going to lead this off on the last thing. Rennie's is the like sports bar. If you're just looking to go to the local sports bar like you would see in Animal House, the college film filmed on the University of Oregon, you would go
mm.
to Rennie's. Yeah,
Very fun.
absolutely.
Well, and there's one other place that we could go, right? Which is where you were telling me off air. And what
Oh,
place
that's
is
right.
that? Yeah, what
Oh
place is
yeah, yeah.
that?
Why not? This is if you're looking for like maybe a little bougier, a little more upscale. Not like it's fine dining, but the view you cannot beat from this place. North Bank McMinimans is on the actual Willamette River. Best view in the city. You can sit out there with a nice beer, a burger, and watch this giant, beautiful river rush past you. I've seen many a football star there. I met Dan Lanning himself there. He's probably not going back, especially since I just blew up his spot. But yeah, like it's where many athletes go. Many, especially for many of the global track events and stuff like that. I really like that spot as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. We are well resourced now for when we all invade Eugene. So
Hey, there you go.
I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball at you before I get you out of here. Obviously, so this episode's dropping a couple weeks after the fact, but recently in the news, Khyree Jackson
Mm.
was in a horrific accident and passed away. Can you just give a few thoughts on him and what he meant to the Oregon program? Just honor him, if you could honor him for a half a minute.
Yeah. I'll just say, like, truly one of those players, like, especially with the transfer player, you never know how they're going to get along with the team or anything. Like, even if it's just like, are they just there doing their job, or do they really blend in with the culture? And the people really blended in with this culture, seemingly had a friend in every single member of this roster. Not only that, but not that it would lessen things much worse, like the pain or anything, if it was something like it was a DUI on his side, like that would be tragic and bad. But it's even worse that it was just some other person's stupid decision that ends three people's lives. We all know this is like too common of a story. It's terrible that it's truly like right before he has achieved his dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a really inspirational story here at like Oregon, like watching a player just become so much better than they were at the previous school.
Yeah.
It couldn't be more tragic, and I'm sure. And it's unfortunate because we're not even far removed from another player, Spencer Webb. We had a tight end who tragically died. So it's unfortunately that more and more of these seasons from different teams you hear about dedicated to this player. But I do think that they'll find like Lanning and the team will find meaningful ways to commemorate him. And so I suppose I'm looking forward to that. But ultimately, a tragic experience, and yeah, couldn't have happened to really a better person.
Yeah. For the family, for friends, and obviously the families for the other two. And I'm blanking on their names. I know. I think it's AJ Litton from Penn State, and then there's another player as well that was in that accident. We're praying for your families, praying for the Oregon community, and yeah, like it's just a sad tragedy, and praying that God would be with you. Um, and also just like drunk driving stupid, don't do it.
Yeah, in 2024, and
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Sorry to kind of, I wanted to make sure that we talked about him. I know it shifted the mood. Let me maybe shift us back as we close. You've given us so much good stuff, and I would hate for our listeners to only hear you here and not hear you where you typically are. So give us all of the places we can find you, and when you drop episodes and all that stuff.
Yeah. So Quack 12 podcast is where you can find us really on any podcast platform, or we also have a YouTube page, Patreon if you want even more specific crazy duck stuff like the things we were talking about earlier. But yeah, Quack 12 podcast is the website. It's the everything, Twitter, X, whatever. Also, right now, we're in the middle of our roster reviews. Those feature our frequent guest / co-host, Hifliday. I highly recommend checking those out. You can find those either linked on our Twitter page or at our website. It is some real in-depth stuff, and like it's been really fun talking to all these new Big Ten friends. And let me tell you, hearing so many more Midwestern accents than I'm used to. I'm used to a lot more like dudes and mans,
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, but it's been fun. I mean, we're in new territory for the Quack 12 too. People were asking us if we were going to change our name. We're like, nope. Like,
Nope.
apparently the number doesn't mean anything when it comes to these conferences things. So we're just going to stay Quack 12. Who cares?
Well done. Well done. Well done. Nice. And is there a day of the week? Did you? I don't know if you mentioned already. Day of the week that you guys.
Typically it's Wednesdays, I believe. It kind of fluctuates, especially in the off season. But we're once a week guaranteed every week since 2017. And then once the football season happens, we're doing like 2 or 3 episodes a week, like right after the game, middle of the week, previews. Yeah. So it's hard to avoid at a certain point.
That's nice. Cool. Well, Adam, thank you so much for giving us the state of the ducks and for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a blast. Thanks a lot, Zach, and hope to talk soon.
For sure. For sure. For the rest of you, thanks for listening. Take care. God bless.